Good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. How are you this morning? Brothers and sisters, this morning I was asked by the organizer to speak to you on the topic breaking the bonds of attachment. When the organizer first approached me, they asked me, can you come and give a talk? As usual, I say yes. Then after that, they say, can you speak on attachment? I should have said no, but I still say yes. Then when I come here, the topic has become breaking the bonds of attachment. So not only to talk about attachment, but how to break it. That makes it more difficult, because in Buddhism, when you have broken the attachment, you have reached the third stage of sainthood. So I have not reached the third stage of sainthood. I am just like you. I am a Putujana, an ordinary human being. I have not broken the bonds of attachment. So what we can do is just to reduce. Every Putujana can reduce our attachment, to reduce our sufferings due to attachment. That we can do and we should do. So it will be more appropriate if we say we are trying to learn here this morning how to reduce our attachment. Not to break it as yet. We have not come to that stage. In fact, even the first stage of sainthood, you have not break your attachment. Only in the second stage of sainthood, you reduce a little bit of your attachment. Only when you have reached the third stage of sainthood, then you have removed completely your attachments. And since none of us here have reached the first stage of sainthood, I suppose so we will be talking about how to reduce our attachment and in that way reduce our suffering. Now, to begin this topic, I would like to ask one question. Why do we behave in certain ways? What makes us behave in certain ways? Why you do this and you do that? What actually motivates you? What actually directs you to do these things? Have you ever thought of this? Why are you sitting here this morning? What makes you come here this morning? Think a little bit first. Think. Why you are here and what makes you come here? Some will say, oh, my friends asked me to come here. Well, your friend asked you to come here. Means your friend is a condition that makes you come here. It's a condition. But you may say, no, why are you still here? So that comes to a very fundamental topic in Buddhism. That is the mind. The citta. The citta or the mind. Your mind makes you come here. In the Dhammapada, the first verse says, mind is the forerunner of all things. Your mind tells you to come, your mind directs you to come here. And your mind can go this way or that way. So your mind make you come here. And what is this mind or citta? In the Pali words, there are more than 30 over words to describe the word mind. So, one English word mind, they have many Pali words to express many things. So, sometimes translation gives confusion. So anyway, I use the word citta, the Pali word, which you can say is the mind or is the attitude. What is your attitude? You have certain attitude in you, Every one of us have certain attitude or certain mind in us. That's why we behave in certain ways. Now, what is this attitude then? In the Atthasalini, one of the texts on Abhidhamma, which is defined as the end product of all the factors which can have influence on our psychic operations and can produce psychic operations. Now, what is citta? What is mind? It's end products of all the factors which can have psychic operations and can produce psychic operations. So your mind, your attitude at this moment, It's not something fixed. It is something that was influenced by all the other previous factors. Maybe your friends influence you. Maybe the environment here influence you. Maybe your upbringings in the past, your teachers influence you. So all this finally influence your chitta, your attitude. And therefore you have certain attitude. Therefore this chitta or attitude itself is an end product of all the previous factors. It is not something that is given by God or something that you are like that. Some people say, I'm born like that. Actually, it's not really that you are born like that. You are born like that because of all the previous factors, including your environment, your family upbringing, your teachers' influence, your peers' influence, and so on. And therefore, you have this kind of attitude or this kind of mind. Now, there is a second attitude, there is a second definition to this, that the chitta task form will determine an action in this way or that way. And therefore, after all these factors that have influenced you, and you have this type of attitude, and therefore you want to act in this way or that way. Therefore, after all the influence, you have certain attitude in you, and yet it is not determined, it is not decided that you will definitely act in this way, but you can be this way or that way. I hope you understand. I have to approach this topic from the topic of the mind because attachment comes from the mind. So, you have to understand that our mind, our state of mind is the result of all the previous factors. And yet it is not decided by all the result of previous factors, because in addition, your present state of mind can also determine what to do next. That is our state of mind. And then this state of mind makes the difference why two persons, let's say, two twins brought up in the same environment, influenced by the same parents, and so on and so on and so on, supposed to have the same attitude of mind, and yet they could behave in different ways. Because they can decide, the mind can decide which way it wants to go, So that's why they behave in different ways. Now, so this is about chitta. Then I have to tell you another concept is the roots in us. Every one of us got roots, Every one of us got roots. Or mula, Every one of us got roots. We are what we are today, and when you analyze people, we all have different roots in us. And in the Buddhist teaching, we classify our roots into three types. We have three types of roots. I'm drawing the roots. This the tree trunk. Okay? Just now I mentioned to you about chitta. Your attitude. It is actually fed by or what called supported by your roots. And all of us got some roots in us. We have some roots. And these roots we call the roots of greed, hatred, and delusion. The root of greed, hatred, delusion. We have these three types of root in us. Now these three types of roots, this root here is greed root. If it's good, we call it the good roots. This is bad root, isn't it? Greed root is bad root, so we call it akusala. akusala mula. That means the bad roots. But sometimes we also have good roots. We have good roots. We have aloba, adosa, amoha. Those are good roots. So you ponder, you think for yourself, what sort of roots I have. You have 3 types of roots, greed, hatred, and delusion. And you also have some good roots in you, Then you better ponder now. Because these are the rules that make you what you are, And then you ask one question. You may ask me one question. Where the roots come from? How come I got this type of roots? Why I always get angry with people I cannot control? Or why I'm so greedy? Where my roots come from? Actually, very simply, your roots is the result of your previous karma. Because of all the previous karma that you have done, you sow not only bad karmas, you also build your roots. You enrich your roots. You add ingredients to your roots. So each time you steal one thing, you not only steal and reap the bad karmas, you also make yourself more greedy than before. And therefore, if a thief steals once, he likes to steal twice, because his root is getting richer and richer. And then he will steal 3 times, 4 times, and so on. And if you do good, then you do more good and more good and more good, because your good roots also build. Your roots receive is fertilizers from what you are doing every day. Okay? So now, we try to analyze all these 3 roots. I will analyze these roots more. Your greed root more, because this is the one that affects your attachment. Okay? Because of all these roots, that's why we produce certain mind, certain attitude, and then therefore it turns out into certain manifested phenomena, manifested expression in terms of action, words, or speech and thoughts. Okay? If you, in terms of bad action, killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, words, lying, and so on and so on. So you have 10 evil actions or 10 good actions up there. Okay? So I hope you got this all in your mind. Well, good. Just to add some more, chitta, or if you do it with intention, with intense intention, with intense intensity, that is called karma. Okay? Chittena is karma. And therefore, if you do something with your karma, that's why you have the results later. Okay, so far so good. Because I'm afraid if you are completely new, then you are confused by now. But if you are very seasoned, there's nothing new, isn't it? May I know how many are newcomers? Or how many are seasoned people? How many seasoned people here? How many have heard Dharma talks for more than 3 times? Oh, no problem. Those people should have no problem. How about those who have heard Dharma talks for less than 3 times? No. That means all of you are very good. Now I want to analyze the roots, okay? According to what we can find in the Abhidharma. We go on the good aspect first, okay? The aloba roots, or the roots of non-greed. The aloba roots, or the root of non-greed. And what are the characteristics? The characteristics are mentioned in the Abhidharma. Number 1, not desirous for an object, and not attached. You are not attached to anything, just like the water will flow over the lotus leaf and drop down. It will not cling to the lotus leaf. So this is one characteristic. What the roots, this one root have these characteristics, that you are not desirous for an object. People have a Honda Accord, but you don't have that desires, You don't have that desire that I want to have an Honda Accord. So you don't have that desire. And number two, not caring for possession. Not caring to possess. Some people want to possess everything. When people have something, I also want to possess something. If people possess a car, I must also possess a car. If people possess a wife, I must also possess a wife. If people have possessed 2 wives, I must have 3 wives. Must possess. And you say, I love somebody, I love him or I love her, I must possess her. This is again the root of attachment. But in this case, we are talking about good roots. The good root is not caring for possessions. You don't bother so much about to possess it. To possess it. And number 3, it says not remain stuck. Just like stuck in the mud and eating the mud. That means you don't possess something and then you stuck there forever. This is one of the characteristics. And number 4, it is the foundation for liberty or the foundation for dana, foundation for generosity. If you have alopa roots, you practice generosity, you practice it very naturally. You give very happily. You do it with enjoyment. But if you have bad roots, you greed roots, people persuade you to give, but you give you give. You don't feel like giving, but because everybody is giving, I have to give. You see, probably you give, but in your mind, I lost $10 today. But if you have the alopa roots, you give it so generously, so freely. That is called the alopa roots and a foundation for generosity, for dana. And number 5, do not take more than necessary. If you have the alopa roots, what you deserve, you take. What you don't deserve, you don't take. You don't take more than necessary. This is the characteristic. If you do a service and people ask you to pay, people pay you $10, but you know you're only worth $4, you only take $4. You go to the hawkers, the hawkers give you wrong change. You give $5, the hawkers give you back $45. You don't take and go, because you have the alopa roots. You don't take more than what you deserve. You return. And number 6, see defects where there is defects. If you have the alopa roots, you can see defects when there is defects. That means you admit your mistake. When we have greed roots, we normally don't admit our mistakes. In this line, we quarrel with all sorts of people. We quarrel with our colleagues, with our bosses, with our children, with everybody. And we always say, everybody else is wrong. How many of us say we are wrong? Because we think we are right. That's why others are wrong. That shows our greed roots. And if you don't have greed roots, your greed roots is less, then you will see defects when there is defects. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe my children was right. You can see the defects. And number 7, when you don't have this bad roots, you have less misery, not less misery. You don't feel so miserable. Those people who have greed roots, they feel very miserable. Because even though they are very rich, I have seen very rich people feeling very miserable every day. They will come back, Mr. So-and-so, the datin so-and-so, the diamond is bigger than my diamond. There are many people without diamond, but the so-and-so, the diamond is bigger than my diamond. So she feels very miserable. They go and quarrel with their husband. You see, so-and-so already got Tan Sri. Now the fellow is called Puan Sri. You see, me, nothing. People still call me Puan. You open your eyes, you observe human phenomena. These are all the roots we have inside us. And some people suffer for nothing. They feel miserable for nothing. Okay? And then the next quality is that you are not entangled in rebirth. If you don't have greed roots leads to craving. You crave for this, you crave for that, and the process of craving is itself rebirth. It leads to rebirth and go on and on in the cycle of samsara. Next quality, without this, without the greed roots, it gives rise to renunciation. That's why if you want to become a monk, you check yourself first. How much greed root in you? If you have plenty of greed roots, please don't become monks. Because otherwise you become greedy monks. Because just change uniform only, isn't it? Just change your clothing and change your hairstyle. But inside you don't change. Then you become very greedy. But one of the qualities is that if you have this aloba root, you don't have so much attachment, then it gives rise to the thoughts of renunciation, the thoughts of nekema, or the thoughts of renounce. You're not only not attached, you even want to give up. These are people, that's why these are the few people who become monks. They not only don't want to get attached, people like us want to be attached, They not only don't want to be attached, they want to give up. So they have cars, they have, the reverend, we have one reverend who was formerly electrical engineer in JKR. He earned about $3,600 a month. He has got good car, good income, good knowledge. He is the number 2 man in the electrical engineering branch. And then he resigned, he renounced, and he gave away all his money. He gave some to YBM, gave some to here, some there, and everything else he gave, and then he became a monk. Can you do it? You cannot do it. How many of us are willing to do it? And when he did that, a lot of people say, "Oh, stupid fellow." Because so many things he gave up. That is because we have greed roots and we judge him like that. But he has got no greed roots. To him it's a burden. So it's different. Next, it gives rise to impurity. What do you mean by give rise to the sense of impurity? When you have less greed roots, you see a lot of things. It's not that pure as you think, not that beautiful as you think. But I warn you, it's not that it is displeasing you. Displease you, no. We Buddhists don't go to the other extreme of seeing everything you get fed up, That is wrong. But only seeing things and know that there are defects in it. They are not that pure, not that clean as it appears. And then number 10, and this is the one that I think we can do, not avoid sensual pleasure as the aim of existence. A lot of us, our aim of existence, our sole aim, the only aim of existence is to enjoy. Enjoy what? Enjoy our senses, enjoy our ears, our mouth, our ears. You go to karaoke, listen to the best music. You turn on the TV, watch the best movie. You go to Kuala Selangor, take the best seafood. You travel all the way, to enjoy your senses. I have a colleague. He will go every Saturday all the way to Klang to take seafood. And then in the Monday morning, he will come to the office and say, stomach ache. But he enjoy. But the next Sunday morning, you say, stomach ache. But yesterday, the food was damn good, like it. These are people whose life, if you ask him why you want to suffer and you enjoy and then you suffer, you say, that's life, you see. He spent all his money to enjoy sensual pleasures. And number 11, cuts off all the factors of covetousness, all the factors of trying to get what others have. You have that in your mind. You want to get everything what others have. And if you have aloba roots, you don't have this kind of feelings. You have what we call mental health. Your mind becomes very healthy. You know, if you have nothing to do and you sit down and you just envy your neighbor, well, your neighbor got Honda, I got car, I want to have one. This one got Mercedes, I also want to have one. So every day you worry here and you worry there. You are covetous thing. You are trying to greedy for all these things. Although you don't have it, you just always think about all these things. It hurts your mind. It hurts your mind. You are mentally, you have problems. And that is why in the Western country now, in USA, they say 1 in 3 is a psycho. Because they don't have so much mental hygiene now. Everybody is looking around and competing with other people. You know school teachers? How many school teachers here? I know about the gossips of school teachers. But school teachers, after the school holidays, when they gather together, so and so, my husband brought me to Australia. The other fellow, no, I went to USA, better still. They said, no, I didn't go anywhere. USA not so nice. I went this year I went to Disneyland, Tokyo. You know, comparing. And the one who could not go, the husband useless. So you feel, so you have covetousness in your heart, and then you go back. Heart problem in you only. My problem in you only. So, because of your roots, you suffer. And number 12, the quality. It says it is the quality, the condition for acquisition of wealth. When you don't have the greed roots, then it is the condition for you to go and acquire money. Not because you have greed roots, you go and acquire money. In Buddhism, because we don't have greed roots, therefore I can acquire wealth and I'm very happy. This is called bhoga. That means you enjoy your wealth. You not only acquire, you enjoy. Because you don't have greed roots, whatever you acquire, no matter how much or how little, you enjoy. Because you don't measure your wealth by how much. You measure your wealth by you enjoy it, that's all. You may earn $10, you enjoy. You may go for Fraser's Hill holiday, still you enjoy. Because you are contented. But if you are not contented, you go to Fraser's Hill, you enjoy. You while you are there, you are still complaining. Should have gone to Himalaya mountain. Cooler. So in Buddhism, this is called one of the convictions for the acquisition of wealth. Because you don't have greed roots, that's why you can enjoy, you can acquire wealth and enjoy wealth. And please don't mistake that in Buddhism, we ask you to give up your wealth, not to have money. No, Buddhism asks you to acquire your wealth and enjoy your wealth. As the Buddha has already told Anathapindika, for laymen like us, there are 4 enjoyments that we can enjoy while we are living in this life. Number 1 is to acquire wealth, acquire money. Number 2 is to keep your money, don't acquire and disappear. Keep your money. And number 3, associate with wise people, with learned people, with monks. And number 4, to use your money, to enjoy your money. So, without greed roots, you can have this enjoyment. But if you have greed roots, even you have a lot of money, still you cannot enjoy. There are a lot of people with a lot of money, but they never enjoy. Some because they are stingy, even though they have millions, but they will say millions is not enough. So they suffer. Some, they enjoy, they spend the money and enjoy, but every time when they spend the money, they feel not satisfied because they have greed roots. They have greed roots. And finally, number 13, without this root of greed, it leads us to the realization of anicca dasana. It leads us to the realization of transitory or realization of change or impermanency. Impermanence. A person with little roots, little greed roots, eventually you will see, things comes, things go, money comes, money goes, people come, people goes. So you come to realize, oh, this is anicca. So these are the qualities, or these are the attributes of alobha. Okay? And then of course, the other attributes for dosa and moha. There are many attributes in it. If I were to mention all of them, it may be too long. But I must mention something about the attributes of moha because our roots don't operate singularly. Sometimes singularly, but sometimes in combination. Sometimes you have greed root, sometimes you have hatred root, sometimes you have delusion root. But sometimes this root and this root operate together. Although it never this and this together. The hatred root and the greed root don't operate together. But the hatred root operate together with the delusion root sometimes. So I must mention this a little bit because sometimes it's associated there. So in the moha root or the root of delusion, in the amoha root or the root of non-delusion, the attributes or the quality of it is wisdom. Is wisdom. Wisdom, the ability to see things as it is, yatha bhutang, to see things as what it should be, to see things more clearly. That is wisdom. And then the second attribute is, you do not feel miserable if you do not get what you desire. You desire something, but you don't get it. Well, because of your wisdom, because of your amoha roots, you don't feel miserable. I should be the top student of the class, but by accident or by some mistake, I didn't become the top student. Well, should I feel miserable? If I feel miserable, I'm miserable. But through my amoha roots, well, this is the nature of life. Sometimes you are good, sometimes you are bad, sometimes you have to face with bad karma. So you accept it. I call this accidents in life. Sometimes you meet in accidents, you don't do bad things. Just like you drive a car, you don't do anything bad, but somebody come and knock you. So accidents in life. So we also have accidents in life, Sometimes something that you deserve, you don't get it, it goes to somebody else. Then you may feel miserable. But if you have the amoha roots, then you don't feel so miserable. Okay? And also because of that, you don't have misery because you have wisdom. Now, these two roots are very important, and we try to do a lot of things in order to enrich these two roots. Now the opposite of it, now I have to go to the opposite of it. The opposite of alobha. Now I go to lobha. Greed roots. Just now I was talking about not greed roots. Now I talk about greed roots. If you have greed roots, what are the characteristics? Again, according to the Abhidhamma, number one, chase after sensual objects, which you believe can satisfy your craving. So you now can sit down, you meditate, you think for yourself, am I a very greedy person? My greed root, is it very strong? You can measure by, do I always chase after sensual objects? Do I always chase after TV programs? Do I feel very miserable if I miss the program for 6:30 tonight? 6 to 30 to 7:30, what is the program? I don't know. But some children never forget the program, or some housewives never forget the program. If you always chase after that, then you can say that person's the greed root is very strong. And some people, karaoke root is very strong. They always go to karaoke because they want to enjoy their ears. And some people, their mouth, the sensual objects to satisfy their mouth. You can know they go for all sorts of food. You ask them where can you find good food? They can tell you all the places. So, not only this, some people, some men, always go after women. Because to them, woman is another sensual object. And therefore they go, one after another they go. So, you can sit down and examine how much greed roots you have. Second quality of the greed root is that greed roots multiplies itself. Each time you have satisfied your greeds. The commentary says, just like you spread oil on all over your body. Each time you greed something, you get something, after that, it doesn't stop there, It multiplies. It multiplies. You want more. So if you have one house, you want 2 houses. After 2 houses, you want 3 houses. You have 1 wife, you want 2. After that, you want 3. So it multiplies. So again, you can see, you can look back whether how much greed root do I have. Am I satisfied with 2 cars, or I want to have 3 cars? Am I satisfied with this or satisfied with that? I want to have more to enjoy my senses. And therefore, lead us to the next one. The next quality is the desire to acquire whatever which others have and to do all the things necessary to get it. You know, some children, some school children, they have never been trained in any way. They went to the emporium, they saw something, they just steal it. It's a reflection of their greed roots. Some of them are very rich. They were even princess in Malaysia, went overseas, went to emporium, was caught stealing. It's not that they are poor or they cannot afford to pay. They have plenty of money, they got all sorts of cards in their pockets. But they refuse to use, they just have the desire to take whatever others have. That again is a reflection of our greed roots. That's why even from children we can observe, some children are more greedy than other children. That, as I said earlier, due to our past karma, you have enriched your roots that way. And now the next point. On greed, there are two very prominent features which we can see when you have too strong greed root, and that is number 1, association with opinions. You attach yourself to your opinions. You attach yourself to opinions. You have opinions and you attach yourself to it. That is greed itself. And you know, in this world, a lot of problems occur because of this. And although we seldom realize, we each through our experience, our life, our knowledge, we have come to establish certain opinions, and we are so attached to that opinion that we think our opinion is the best, and therefore we always want to put our opinions on others, and we don't even want to accept others' opinions. And this causes a lot of problems. For example, some people preach their religion and then they become so attached to their opinion that their religion is the best and one and the only the best thing in the world. And therefore they think that others are no good. And therefore they want to put their wish on other people. They want to introduce their ideas on other people. That shows their greed root. And so also for our community, a lot of problems arise. I've seen many Buddhist societies, I've been to many Buddhist societies, and sometimes I analyze their problem. Their problem is just simply because of this. Association with opinionedness. The chairman has one opinion, he fixed his opinion. The secretary has one opinion, he fixed his opinion. Treasurer, one opinion. And the three opinions always quarrel. Apparently, it looks like three men are quarreling. But actually, they are all three opinions quarreling. Why we have so much quarrel in this world today? Because of all our opiniontedness. Very simple example, if you organize an activity, the chairman will come and say, okay, we must arrange the class this way. Another EXCO member will come and say, oh, this is like classroom. We are organizing a seminar or something like that. We cannot arrange by classroom, we must arrange the horseshoe. Opiniontedness. Then they quarrel. And each one think that their opinion is the best. Then they quarrel. So husband and wife also can quarrel. This is the way I wash my plates. The wife said, this is the wrong way, you must go this way. And then they quarrel. Opinions. Actually, it's the opinion that quarrels. You examine, it's our greed roots. We are each attached to our own opinions. The husband always come back and walk into the house without removing the socks. To him, that's the right way. To the wife, that's the wrong way. Then they quarrel. So, because of our greed roots, we have opinions, and our opinions are fixed, and therefore, these opinions rub against another opinions, and that's where we have a lot of problems. Next is conceitedness, or use very simple English, pride. Action. People say action. Why? Because of our greed roots, we become so attached to our own self. We think that our self is the best. Therefore, it is always, my opinion is the best, the way I dress is the best, the way I talk is the best. And then to extend it further a little bit, my family is the best, my company is the best, my country is the best, my race is the best, my language is the best. Therefore, others are all not so good. So you extend, from yourself you extend. We don't have to talk so far, but go back to our own self. Because we think that we are so important, we become so proud. The Chinese use the word man. It simply means pride or conceitedness. And this conceitedness, every one of us to some degrees we have, but for those people who have more, people say more names attached to it, more honors, so-called big shots, they have more. Because they feel important. And they got drunk with their importance. So in life, in our daily life, we feel that we are very important. We feel insulted if people don't respect us. If I smile to you, you don't smile to me, you insult me. See? Because we feel important. See or not? Then if you say you have more and more position, now in this society you have so-called position, you rise to become a middle income group people, then you don't look, you only have passed around middle income. You don't like to associate with a lower income group. You scared they borrow money from you, see? So it's again conceitedness. You don't want to be associated with other people. And then you look up upon the higher up because you hope to climb there also. And the worst part is for those who have a lot of titles behind their names. And if you have PJK, AMN, Dato, Datin and all those things, all these go and boost further your conceitedness. And then if you are chairman of this society or president of that society, again it boosts your conceitedness. Like I'm the deputy president of YPM, so the deputy president of YPM, this itself can boost my conceitedness, So if so and so is the president of a BMSU section, it can boost his. So you have to be very careful. I'll tell you the tricks afterwards, how not to be so conceited. Huh? What I'm trying to say here is that all these things, the names, the honors attached to you, can boost yourself, boost your conceitedness, and after boosting it, you want more. You want more. This is the nature. Now, I will speed up a little bit. Now, so far I hope you have understood what I have tried to drive home about attachment and the root of moha. So now we arrive at the next question. Just now what I have tell you is what is all about attachment. Okay, I have told you what is all about attachment. Now the next question is, why do you want to break the attachment, so to say? As I have started at the beginning, we're not going to talk about why you want to break the attachment, but why you want to reduce the attachment. Now why? Some people say, I got attachment, I'm very greedy. But that's the way I am lah. I don't want to change. Now what are the reasons? I can give a few reasons. Number one, our greed roots and our delusion roots lead us to bad actions, bad thoughts, bad speech, and therefore lead us to suffering, misery, and finally rebirth. Because we have greed roots and we have delusion roots, we will do bad things. For example, you have greed roots, you go and steal. You order to steal, you cheat, you plot, then you go and steal. You go and possess whatever are meant for others. And then, if you are not careful, you end up in Kajang prison, you see. Isn't it a misery? That is from what we can see. The external legal framework, what the external legal frameworks can do upon us if you misbehave. But what about karma? What the karma of stealing will lead to the result of stealing, the vipaka of stealing. And therefore, one day you have to reap that bad result. And if you do more and more greedy, more and more things based on greed roots, you will eventually lead to yourself into bad rebirth in bad planes. Normally, hungry ghost planes. Why hungry ghost? Because the hungry ghost never feels satisfied. Hungry ghost planes. Why hungry ghost? Because the hungry ghost never feels satisfied. In fact, some of us are already in the hungry ghost planes because we never feel satisfied. The reason, the moment you don't feel satisfied, you can assume yourself to be in the hungry ghost planes. You know, the Buddhist concept of planes of existence can be taken at two areas, two levels if you wish. Either the idealistic level or the realistic level. If you don't believe in the realistic level, then you can believe in the idealistic level, and that is, you can experience whatever we talk about in this life at this moment. What I mean is, if you feel happy, you are actually in the heavenly mode, heavenly plane. But if you feel miserable and you can never get what you want, and you always crave for what you want, but you don't get it, then you are in a hungry ghost planes. Always feeling miserable because you don't get what you want. Actually, you already got a lot, but you still suffer. So this is the one reason why we must reduce our cravings, so that we reduce our suffering. And number two, the reasons why we have to reduce our craving is that or attachment is that if you don't do it, then you will do the other opposite, and the opposite, that means craving, will enrich your roots more. You become a more and more greedy person, more and more covetous person. Therefore, your roots become, your greed roots become bigger and bigger. And that means you become worse and worse in the cycle of samsara. You become worse and worse. For you to climb up again, it will be quite difficult. You will be sliding down. So this is the second reason. And number 3, if you don't reduce your bad roots, there is no chance for spiritual development. No chance for you to go up. If you remain what you are, you don't just what you are. If you don't go down, but you can never go up. Because when we have a lot of greed roots, we do a lot of bad things, there's no chance for spiritual development. And if you take it in our present life now, just take a very simple example. If you have very strong greed roots, you spend all your time enjoying your senses, you think you have time for spiritual development? There are very few people like you are here, sitting down here this morning for some spiritual discussion, Most people will be enjoying themselves in the town, is it? At the karaoke or film shows or something. They're enjoying something. So with all this, getting all these external objects to fulfill their senses, they have no chance, no time to think of spiritual development. And therefore they will never go up. They have no chance to go up. Therefore, for these 3 simple reasons, we must try and reduce our attachment. Try and reduce our attachment. Okay? Now, that brings us to the third aspect. How to do it. How to reduce our attachment. In the sutras, or rather in the Abhidhamma, there are many methods mentioned, mostly related to the training of the mind, related to meditation. How to do it. And therefore I will tell you how, according to what has been exposed in the Abhidhamma. But before that, I want to introduce you a few methods according to my formula. Why I say so? Because meditation is quite difficult for some people, They just couldn't get started. They just don't want to get started. Or they get started for only 1 week or 1 day or 2 weeks and then they give up. So meditation can be quite difficult because of our roots. If in your past life you have never meditated, in this life for you to start meditating is quite difficult. But if you have made meditation your habit, it's quite easy. So strictly speaking, we should follow the path of meditation or training of the mind. Meditation, in another English word, means training of the mind, how to train your mind. As I have spoken right at the beginning, it was due to the mind. Therefore, you have to train your mind. But before that, let me give you some hints on what we can do in this life so that we can prepare ourselves to meditate. Okay? This is non-traditional. You don't find in the text. That's why I say according to my formula. Number 1 is to regulate our sensual enjoyment. We living in this world, we are living in this world and we enjoy our senses. Everybody enjoy our senses, including the monks. Everybody else, everybody. Everyone use our senses. Therefore, we cannot eliminate enjoyment of sensual pleasure. But we can regulate. We can regulate, especially for laymen. Therefore now, you think, I must reduce my greed roots. The first thing you have to do is to regulate my sensual enjoyment. If last time I like to eat seafood, now I eat seafood but I eat less. Last time I must eat every day, now I eat maybe once a week. You must begin somewhere. And you may choose something that you think is easier for you to do. If you like to watch TV, There are a lot of TV manias around, you know. They cannot survive without TV. Then, try to regulate. Make it a point. If you used to watch 4 or 5 hours per day, now 1 hour or 2 hours. Less. Then you reduce slowly. If you used to borrow not only TV programs, but you also borrow video tapes, now you better borrow less. Then after that, you borrow less and less, and finally you don't borrow. And you already reduce. So it's quite important to begin with our habitual living by reducing some of our sensual pleasure. Some people that say, I have no time to learn Buddhism. And I begin to wonder why you have no time to learn Buddhism. But they have time for television, they have time for everything else. They have time for picnic, for everything else. But they say they have no time to learn something from Buddhism. That is something very peculiar. So you must learn to reduce. For example, I hardly watch television. In fact, I don't follow any television programs. I don't know. So you ask me now what is the latest Cantonese show? I don't know. It doesn't mean that I didn't watch before, you know. I also watch. Then later I find that it's a waste of time. So I reduce, and finally I don't watch. Forget about it. And once you eat, this is just like drugs, you know. If you watch every day, you want to watch. Once you stop a few times, after that you forget about it. You don't follow the story, you get fed up of the story. Then you can stop slowly. So this one first thing you can do. Number two is to participate in religious ceremony. To come for morning service, to come for Sunday service. Religious ceremony makes you humble. Religious ceremony tranquil your mind, prepare your mind. It actually tame, or what you call domestify your mind. You know, it makes your mind better. So it is also very important to participate in religious ceremony. If you don't do it, if you do it every Sunday, and after you have become consistent, you must do it every day. And for a lot of Buddhists, every day there are many methods there are many approaches to this ceremony. Some only take 1 minute. 1 minute a day. But if you do 1 minute a day for 365 days, it means 365 minutes, you know. And it comes to a lot. And it can affect your life. Sometimes we don't know, but it can affect our life. The 1 minute is actually very simple. Light your stick, put in front of the Buddha, and chant Namo Tassa 3 times. 1 minute only. Isn't it? And then we got 3 minutes. 3 minutes one, from Namo Tassa until observance of 5 precepts. 3 minutes. Then up to you, you can extend. But for most people, 3 minutes. For those retired people, maybe half an hour, because they have more time. For Uncle Fang Seng Lim, at night you meditate another half an hour or 1 hour already. So you can participate in this religious ceremony, because this religious ceremony train your mind in various aspects. It calms your mind, it pacifies your mind, and therefore your greed root somehow or other will be reduced a little bit. And number 3, how to reduce your self-conceitedness or your personal pride is by watching it. Watch. You must always be mindful and watch. You know, you can say, I am the president of this society. But always remember, the president does not belong to you, you know. The president is a post. And therefore, you are holding it for the time being. You have been entrusted with this post to do some jobs. Therefore, you always associate this as a kind of jobs given to you. It's a work given to me. It is not an honor or title or something like that. So if you clear your mind is always very clear that this is a kind of jobs given to me and I'm going to execute this job. Then you don't feel miserable when you are stripped of that post. I have seen many Buddhist leaders feel very miserable when they no longer hold a post. Even from president down to deputy president, they feel very miserable. They must always go up, go up, ESCO, then become deputy president, then president. Then that is the normal path, they think so. That's why I like the Rotary Club constitution or the Lions Club constitution where the president must one day become deputy president. Come down. Because to come down all of a sudden is quite hurting, So come down slowly, not so hurting. So when you have this kind of problem, this self-conceitedness associated with you, always watch, be mindful, and always remind yourself that this is only a job that I'm doing and this will disappear one day. I have to leave this job one day. Then you don't feel so miserable. Then number 3, opinionatedness or association with your own opinion. You have to learn, number 1, you accept majority decision, however you dislike. You have to learn to accept this. Some people, their opinions are so strong that if whenever their opinions are overthrown, they resign. Some working in some companies also, they put forward their opinions, if the managers don't accept, resign. Because they're so strong with their opinions, If the boss don't follow my opinion, this company will lose money. And I'm not going to be responsible, so I must resign. Because they want to show that their opinion is so very good, you won't go wrong. So one way is that you must learn to accept majority decisions. If you cannot accept another person's decision, if there are three people, and the 2 people agree with that, and only you agree with this, then you must say, okay, majority works. Of course, some people will say, majority does not stand for the truth. Some very clever people, philosophically, they will say, majority does not stand for the truth. I may be the minority, but I'm telling the truth. I'm upholding the truth. Well, if you want to reduce your conceitedness, then even if it's not the truth, accept it. If you want to reduce your conceitedness, after some time you begin to accept. Because I have been associating with a lot of Buddhist societies, and I have seen how people, they quarrel over opinions, Sometimes they quarrel over the arrangement of chairs, Sometimes they quarrel over whether you should book Tian Hao Temple or Sanjun Hall. Then also they can quarrel, After quarreling, okay, if we accept the majority opinion and settle it, okay. But some people, okay, you book Sanjun Hall, I resign. Oh my goodness. Exif is a very big issue, man. But to me, you need views, you need opinions. What's so grand about it? So you learn to accept other people's opinion, even though you think it is wrong. But then after that, after some time, your self-importance will be reduced. And therefore, now it leads me to the number 4, is to have a spiritual friend with you to watch you. To have a Kalyana Mitta. Kalyana Mitta means a spiritual friend to watch you. We are learning Buddhism. Why do we learn in group? We learn in group because we want the peer pressure on us so that we will be good. Otherwise, we can always lock ourselves in our own rooms and meditate and practice ourselves. Why do we want to come to temples and associate with so many other people? Why do the Buddha want to establish the Sangha? Why do the Buddha insisted that all the monks must gather every week to discuss together? Because we want the peer pressure to make sure that we are good all the time. To eradicate or to reduce our greed roots, we have to watch ourselves, always have to watch ourselves. That means we have to meditate, but, as I said earlier, quite difficult. So quite difficult. Ask somebody to watch you. That is easier. Because we always like to watch outside. Whoever will spend most of his time watching inside? Most people spend their time watching outside. You look at the temple, you look at the building, you look here, you look there, you look at everybody else. But you don't have time to look inside one, isn't it? You scolded everybody else, you scolded everybody else's opinions, everybody else's ideas. But you seldom look inside, And that's why I say the meditation or mental culture or training of the mind can be quite difficult for some people. But if you have a good Kalyana Mitra to watch you, if so many people watch you, finally it becomes no people, So you must have one or two good friends and ask him to watch you. If I'm wrong, please tell me. If I'm wrong somewhere, please tell me. And it is my duty to tell you also if you are wrong somewhere. Now this is quite lacking in our Buddhist circle. When people do wrong, normally we don't like to tell. Typical of the Chinese. This Chinese culture, this is not Buddhist culture. We don't want to tell people. Even if you want to tell people we must go this way, People say go the other way around. You don't want to tell direct. But if you are a good Kalyana Mitra, we should tell. We should tell. For example, if I insisted on certain opinions, I may be so drunk with my opinions, that I don't realize it. But if I have a Kalyana Mitra who comes around and say, hey brother Ang, I think you are too much attached to your opinions already. Your opinion may be right, but others may also be right. Then maybe maybe I'm too much attached to my opinions. Then you reduce. So if you want to reduce your greed root, your hatred root, your moha root, always have some spiritual friends around you to help you to reduce. I think these are the few methods which I think will be quite useful for us to help us to reduce our greed roots. I tell you a story. There was a lay Buddhist worker. He served in the YBM. He served YBM Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia. He served as a council member, and then he served as a secretary. He served as a vice president and served as deputy president. And while he was serving, right at the beginning, then the Reverend Mahinda told him, you must watch yourself. You may become attached to all these things, and then you suffer. And therefore, this young man, he was very careful throughout his careers in YBM. He was very careful. He never get himself attached, and so he planned himself in such a way that he never get attached. He was a deputy president. Then he said, next election, put me as vice president. I will still do my job, but let somebody else be deputy president. Then he becomes vice president. And in the next election, he said, let me be a council member. So he becomes a council member. Because otherwise my ego will grow. My ego will grow day by day. So he becomes council member. And then after that, he doesn't want to sit in the council anymore. And then the YBM council said, we appoint you as an appointed council member. He said, okay, I accept one more term. And then after that, he said, okay, that's enough. Then he has reached his age and he withdrew from YBM. Withdrew in the sense that he no longer hold leadership. So he planned, and he doesn't suffer. He doesn't get attached. But some of us, it's the other way around. We claim more and more, but finally we have to come down somewhere. And then I can tell you, attachment. Every one of us have. And then, because every one of us have, we must suffer to some extent. But because we have some realization, we suffer a little bit less, that's all. Suffer a little bit less. For instance, I take myself. I've been to many Buddhist societies, and normally I'm given very good welcome by those Buddhist societies, especially if I go to very rural areas. They will bring me for lunch, bring me for breakfast, bring me for dinner, everything. They take care of me from the time I step into the town until they send me off. So it's an honor, isn't it? It's so nice, isn't it? But I think it will end very soon, So the next time if I appear somewhere, people may not recognize me anymore. So I must find myself somewhere, you see. So there are many occasions I just like to pop myself in here and there, without being taken care of, so to say, you see. So Vesak celebrations, when I was in Penang, they say, come, you must come, you represent YPM, you must walk together with Koh Sukun, walk together. But I prefer to walk somewhere in the crowd, somewhere nobody realize me. That is to reduce my ego, I also got ego, so must reduce. Otherwise, every now and then you are in the limelight, your ego boosts day by day, Then when you drop down, you suffer. So we Buddhists must always watch. And if we cannot watch ourselves, get somebody else to help us to watch. So these are the physical methods we can adopt. Now I must go back to the sutras. The advice given in the Abhidhamma by the Buddha, how to reduce our attachment or craving. If you are attached to human body, especially men, when they see women only, beautiful women only, they want to take. They're not only interested, they want to possess. Then you must contemplate on the various stages of decay in the corpse. Meditation. You must go to the graveyard and meditate. And if you have people pass away, they have funeral riot, you go and enjoy them, and go and look at the corpse, see how miserable it is. And then if you practice that meditation, then slowly you will reduce your attachment to human body. Not to hate human body, mind you. Some Buddhists go to the extent, hate human body. That's over practicing, I think. Actually not over practicing, wrong practice. Buddhism don't convert it to the other opposite, Buddhism try to neutralize it, that's all. So don't begin to hate, Some men hate women, Well, maybe they have practiced too much, so they hate women. Women are snakes, they say. So cannot get close to them. And maybe some women also say men are snakes, or men are wolves, so don't get close to them. No, that's not the Buddhist idea. But the Buddhist idea is don't get attached. So you can practice the meditation on the decay in our human body, How when we die, the heat will go off, and then our liquid in our body will come out, the pulse will come out, it's smelly, dirty. Then after some time you don't like. Then you don't get so attached. That is the first meditational technique according to your temperament. And the second method is to analyze the 32 constituents of our body. To meditate on the constituent of our bodies in order to get some wisdom, to come to realize that everything is constituted and therefore it is dukkha and anicca. Understand? So you meditate, what is our human body? Our human body is actually nothing but a composition put together, Your hair here, your hair here, your hair of the body, your eyes here, your nose here, everything put together. That is human body. So when we meditate on the 32 parts of our human body, then after some time, some wisdom will arise in us that all these are constituted. I am also constituted, and therefore one day decay will set in. It is not permanent. So you don't get so attached. Okay? This second method. And the third method, which is perhaps the most common method, and that is the practice of the Brahma Vihara, or the practice of Brahma Vihara. The four sublime states, Metta, Karuna, Upekkha, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha. To practice Metta, begin with practicing of Metta. Practicing of Metta means practicing of loving kindness. Just now you have practiced, isn't it? When you did your service just now. That is why for all Buddhists are advised to practice Metta Bhavana. Because with Metta Bhavana, you instill yourself, or you cultivate within yourself the feeling of love and kindness to other people, and in that process you are reducing your greed root. You're reducing your greed root. Okay? So these are the three mental cultures or the mental states that you practice. Okay? But you should not practice only until this stage. You should go one more step. Not only just to train your mind, Some meditators like to do nothing except meditation. Meditation must also be converted into actions. Meditation means 24 hours. Therefore, if you have metta, karuna, when people need help, you help. And that is practicing metta. Not sit down cross-legged in the pagoda, then only you call metta. That is a training session only. You must come out and practice. Likewise, with karuna, with compassion, if you see people in poor state of help, you want to help them. Therefore you help. And therefore it leads you to practice generosity. So it must always be converted into actions. And one of the fundamental actions which we Buddhists should do is dana, or to do generosity, or to practice generosity, to help others in whatever way you can. Dana is a very big topic which most of you might have known. So you practice dana, you help other people, and in that way you reduce your bad roots. So in the sutra it is mentioned that practicing dana is just like preparing yourself to plant a tree. You must cut away the grasses, the weeds in the garden. If you want to plant a tree in the garden, you must cut away the grasses. Therefore, you want to cultivate yourself, you want to develop yourself spiritually in the Dharma, you must remove the grasses, and that grasses is removed through the practice of dana. Therefore, to sum up, to reduce our craving, to reduce our attachment, there are a few things we have to do in terms of our mind and our action. In terms of our mind is meditation on the 32 parts of the body, meditation on the decay of corpse, or meditation on Brahma Vihara, which is the most common. And in addition, you practice dana. And in that way, your attachment will reduce day by day, and hopefully one day you will gain sainthood. So with this short speech here this morning, I conclude my session here with you. Thank you very much.
Morning, Brother Ang. I've come across a lot of readings and teachings of the Buddha, which stresses a lot on the importance of training of the mind. I'm very curious, what is the difference between the mind and the brain? The mind is not located in the brain. When the brain is not the mind. As one trains the mind, where is the mind? These are things, and how does the mind relate to the brain itself? Thank you.
The brain belongs to the rupa, to the matters. If we divide our human constituent into two parts, mind and matter. So nama and rupa. So our mind belongs to the rupa plane. Our brain belongs to the rupa. Physical brain belongs to the rupa. Our mind belongs to the nama or the mind. So I do not know how they are related. Chief High Priest have given an analogy last time. Just like a motor produces electricity. So the mind can be equated to the electricity, and the brain can be equated to the motor. That's all I can tell you. This is what I heard from Chief Reverend long ago when he equated. He gave these equations. Is there any other questions? propagation, Dharma propagation, where one person come out and talk for 1 hour. It's not a traditional method. The Buddha usually gives dialogue. People ask, he answers, people ask, he answers. That was the Buddhist tradition. But now we have come to a tradition where somebody talk for 1 hour until you get lost, and then ask questions. You are already lost, you don't know where to ask, what to ask. The question is it wrong to be ambitious? Suppose I'm an engineer, I'm ambitious, I want to become manager, I want to become finally managing director and so on and so forth. Is it wrong? Please read the book, Is It Wrong to Be Ambitious? By Chief Reverend. To me, it is nothing wrong. We must always understand our actions and our mind in terms of whether it is founded in bad or good roots, that's all. In terms of whether our mind is with bad intention or with good intentions. Your intention is to improve yourself, to do more. That is not a bad intention. So there is nothing wrong. So it is as simple as that. Always go back to your mind. Is it with a bad motive? If it's not with a bad motive, but with a motive of improving yourself, so that you can contribute more to others with a very good motive, then go ahead. I think this is one thing that the Buddhists, especially in the Chinese traditions, and even in the Theravada traditions of Sri Lanka and Thailand, where we have not really made clear on this point, and therefore a lot of Buddhists are confused, and therefore they either give out everything, or they don't want to become Buddhists. If they become Buddhists, they must give out everything. But this is not the case in the case of Japanese. I've seen a lot of Japanese. They have made their motive, their intention very good, very sublime. For example, the chief of Miti-Toyo. Miti-Toyo is a multinational company. He climbed himself all the way up. But why he climbed himself all the way up? Earn all the money all the way up. Not to acquire wealth to enjoy for himself, but to acquire wealth so that he can print more Buddhist books, so that he can preach the Dharma to all. So you see his intention. To him, acquisition of wealth is a means. To run the company, to manage the company is also a means. To eventually, with all these things and doing all these things with good means, right means, eventually with all his wealth, he established a foundation called the Japan Buddhist Promotion Foundation. And with this money, every year they come out with money to do charity work. This is how the Japanese have managed to integrate between the Dharma and our material life. And this has also been done by the Nichiren Buddhists. And that is why the Nichiren Buddhists today are organizationally so strong. Because a lot of Nichiren Buddhists, they have come to devote themselves to their teachings. To devote themselves to the teaching doesn't mean that they all become monks. In any way, they don't have monks. To devote themselves to the teaching means they must do everything and then give it for the promotion of their teachings. So you can find very hardworking Nichiren Buddhists earning money, and then to end of the year, after paying income tax, after paying all sorts of things, whatever balance of money they have certain amount of money they contribute to propagate their teachings. So I think this point we Buddhists must now learn to integrate the Dharma into our life. Okay? Attachment between spouses eventually will lead us to misery. But we like to be attached, isn't it? And as I said, attachment will eventually lead to misery. So, even between spouses, there is the greatest attachment. And we have to accept the fact. Because of that great attachment, eventually we have to lead to misery. For example, if one pass away, the other fellow will feel very miserable. Or if one leave, the other fellow will feel miserable. So, even between spouses, You can have love and care and tenderness, but you can also reduce a little bit of attachment. In what sense? For example, there are some husbands who always have to go overseas trips, They leave their wife for say 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And if they are so attached that the wife don't see 1 day or 1 hour, feels so miserable, then life is miserable. But if the wife is not so attached, doesn't mean that there's no love. Doesn't mean that there's no love and no care. But she occupies herself with many other things, so that she does not spend all her time dreaming and thinking of the husband. Then her attachment is less, and therefore she suffers less. Okay? Maybe you are not so happy. I think it's quite natural. Especially for women. Not so much for men, is it? Too much attachment can make miserable for both parties also. Some husband cannot move anywhere because the wife is sticky, so to say. So that is also attachment, you see. That doesn't mean that they have extra love. Only extra attachment, that's all. Understand? So we have to make a little bit of distinction between love and care, which in Buddhism is metta, love and care, and attachment or clinging or craving. Okay, thank you very much.